Ugh, finally a break from studying for that big exam coming up. I might as well unwind my knotted up brain and see what Twitter has to say today.
Come on, DreamWorks, you were on such a good streak too!
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Great, another good company milking their franchise by rebranding it as a stupid live-action remake. If you couldn't tell by the video's thumbnail and title, I despise live-action adaptations of animated films with a passion. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been a few decent ones that have brought a new spin upon the original animated films, for example, Maleficent and Cinderella. Although Cinderella has had a lot of live adaptations for years before Disney decided to make a live adaptation of their original animated film. Moving on.
Emotional, damn it!
However, most of the movies produced with this live-action remake mindset have either produced a bland, more unrealistic depiction of said story, or worse, drag the story down the woke train that is making a live-action, a word-for-word reenactment of the original animated film. I'm looking at you, Disney.
FBI, open up!
This sort of propaganda milking of old franchises has been a money laundering scheme for years now to hide the fact that the film and animation industry has lost all creativity and their sense of originality and now produces YouTube re-uploads of old films just to pump out revenue to supply their companies and promote new attractions. Isn't it funny how the live-action How to Train Your Dragon trailer dropped recently just after the sneak peeks into Universal's new How to Train Your Dragon theme park? Huh, not a coincidence at all.
That's suspicious.
I find it entirely disheartening that the original creator of the animated film is producing the live-action remake. Why? Because we can already see from the trailer that the film is going to be almost word for word like the original film. We saw this with the Lion King's original trailer, and what did we get? Boom! A hunk of live-action replicated animation that is as bland as my baking. At least unlike Disney, I can actually cook with old recipes.
Pow!
But seriously, as an animator, I understand the time it takes to dedicate yourself to an idea and buckle down to make it happen. But as an animator, I can also see the lack of emotion and dedication to the work that is being placed into these live adaptations. Look, you can have your stories and create them. More power to you. But don't expect your audience to come back to the same story every single time you make a movie off of an existing animated media. That's plagiarism at play, just adding small little things like a diverse cast or a few changes to the script to make it more quote-unquote appealing. Let me tell you, creatives and critics like me have pointed this out time and time again. We don't want any more live-action remakes. When the How to Train Your Dragon's live-action remake was announced to be in production initially, my heart sank. My hope, along with many others, was that this was going to be an adaptation of the book itself, not the animated movie. Or, at the very least, a movie about Toothless and the Light Fairy's children, the Nightlights. Okay, so why am I talking about this? What is the purpose of this video? I am here to remind you that if you, like most of us, don't want to see these live-action remakes, stop going to those movies. They are feeding off of already made franchises, and it does you no good to pay for a ticket and watch a film that you could find by simply renting the original from a public library for free. Are original films better than the remakes? Some of them aren't, I will admit. But you have to keep in mind that half of the so-called cancelled movies, like Song of the South, which I do plan to do a deep dive commentary on soon, or Mary Poppins, were created and were meant to replicate a certain period. What's sad to me is that society as a whole has gotten so overly sensitive to things that typically they don't do their research into what is happening in said period, or even the release date of a classic movie. I think if people did that, they would find that a lot of quote-unquote offensive things in movies weren't actually offensive, especially during the time period that it was released. Let's remember that context is key to understanding history. Now, no movie is perfect and no film ever will be. We are all diverse people with different backgrounds and will be drawn to certain movies, claiming that they are perfect when they aren't. People have flaws. Movies reflect that by having their own. Stop trying to make everything perfect and let movies be movies. If you don't like something in said movie, but enjoy the message, that's okay. But don't go recreating the movie to appeal to your needs when that was never the intention. How to Train Your Dragon was made in a purely animated space. That's why it worked. Fantasy is meant to be just that, purely creative. There are so many classics out there to choose from that can be offensive to some in the modern era and nostalgic for others. Let us have that nostalgia, create our own with our own original stories, and leave the old ones alone. Remakes are not retelling of stories, it's a cover-up to hide the flaws or rebrand of a movie from movies that are still relevant today. In short, vote with your dollar. Thank you for listening to this bit of wisdom, and shine on, little stars, shine on.